We're about to be able to play multiplayer VR boxing with realistic game mechanics that are even better than the original Thrill of the Fight. With this video, I'll run through what we know so far about multiplayer in Thrill of the Fight 2. I'm mainly drawing on comments we've heard from Ian Fitz of Sea Lost Interactive and Shaniel Deo from Halfbrick Studios. These are the two companies co-developing the sequel. So for the first question you're probably wondering about, when do we get to see it? Ian has said they're aiming for a release by the end of 2023, but he's also carefully managing our expectations. Here's more of what Ian said about that. We've decided upfront on the minimum set of features and qualities that we feel comfortable releasing, and we will release it when we achieve that. We're not timing the release around anything. A good rule of thumb might be that if we haven't actively started promoting the game yet, then we're probably still 3 to 6 months away from launch. To make sure the multiplayer experience is both fun and challenging, balance mechanics and matchmaking are going to be equally important. Let's talk about balance first. For anyone who's played around with, or maybe even has complaints about the punch force multiplier in the original Thrill of the Fight, that's an area where we can expect to see major transformation. I have to say, I think the force multiplier was a thoughtfully designed mechanic, but Ian has clearly been listening to feedback on this, and here's some of what he said about that. The sequel just isn't going to work remotely the same way, so while there may be a handicap system of some kind, it won't be as vital to the whole system as the multiplier was in Thrill of the Fight 1. We heard just a little more on this in the announcement from Halfbrick. In that video, Shaniel explained they feel there's plenty of room to improve the mechanics to make fights feel more fair and realistic. If you're landing the bigger combinations and blows, he said, you should be winning the match. Even with the original Thrill of the Fight, punch force feels way more realistic than it does in VR boxing games with multiplayer like Creed. So I think there's a lot of credibility in Shaniel's words about landing the bigger blows contributing to victory in the forthcoming sequel. I'm a little more cautiously hopeful about what effect landing combinations will have. I'm not a fighter. I've never been on the receiving end of a powerful combo, and if you have been on the receiving end of that, I'd be really curious to hear how you describe it. Please comment below. I can only imagine it's appropriate to model being staggered in some way. But I hope they're at least giving the player a more relevant or realistic orientation challenge than the mitt-matching task that Creed throws at us when we're staggered. Thrill of the Fight 1 is already well recognized for being a great workout. It's super significant for me, and with this in mind, I really hope stamina is not a part of any handicap mechanics like it is in Creed. I say this knowing full well that physical fitness and ability is going to vary widely amongst players, and that brings me to matchmaking. We already have a great example to look at for how this can be done well in VR multiplayer, and that's with 11 Table Tennis. They have a ranking system that updates after every match, and it finds the next most appropriate opponent to challenge you. This makes for really fun matches, and it's so rewarding to watch your ranking slowly climb up in lockstep with your reflexes and skills and understanding of the sport improving. It's also important to recognize that even a perfect matchmaking system won't work well if there isn't a large player base to draw on. As players, we have influence on this. We get to make sure we're welcoming and encouraging teachers to all the new players we encounter. A large player base and good matchmaking also provides the best opportunity to minimize lag. For such a fast-paced sport as boxing, lag is going to be a big challenge. Ian has indicated they're planning to mitigate lag. The physics is different than Thrill of the Fight 1. There will be lag comp. We're looking at both player-to-player and server for different use cases. Not sure what mix we'll end up with yet. It's definitely a huge challenge, but I'm pleased with how it's working out so far. 11 Table Tennis is a great example we can look at as a reference case for a fast-paced game that does lag compensation. I don't fully understand the mechanics, but I can describe it by feel. There seem to be two aspects to it. One is baked in, by default, runs behind the scenes no matter what. The other is a user-controlled level of lag compensation. I only use the one that runs by default behind the scenes. It feels like a lag buffer that prioritizes giving you as smooth and continuous a frame rate as possible when the ball is coming at you, and then the buffer catches up by dropping frames at the end of a point or while the ball is leaving your court or being hit by your opponent. This is really helpful for giving you good visual information when you need it most to react quickly. But sometimes it comes at the cost of having information about your opponent's body mechanics. The other user-controlled lag compensation feature seems to slow the ball after you hit it to afford even more time for the buffer to catch up. I find this makes for a disorienting variability in speed and rhythm though, so I just leave it off and let the base mechanic drop frames to catch up as needed. It's going to be really interesting to see how these lag compensation mechanics transfer into boxing. It'll be a little less clear-cut for the game to recognize the most appropriate moments to drop frames and let the buffer catch up. just speculating. It might be based on when both opponents are stepping back from each other. In any event, I think the most important way to mitigate lag is going to be to match players locally, and that's going to depend on a big player base. So here's your cue. Hit the like button, share this video, help build excitement around this game. Hope you found this interesting. Thanks for watching. Also leave a comment if you'd like to see more content or reviews on other games like VR table tennis.